This video presents the historical background of essentialism in education, together with the key thinkers and their corresponding contributions. Essentialism emerged in the early 20th century as a response to what many educators perceived as the excessive freedom and informality of progressive education, where pragmatists emphasized flexibility and experience. Essentialists called for a return to core knowledge, disciplined study, and cultural continuity. They believed education's purpose was to cultivate intellectual rigor, moral character, and a shared cultural foundation necessary for responsible citizenship. Over time, essentialism became one of the most influential educational philosophies in shaping traditional curriculum and educational standards. Let's start with who is known as the father and founder of educational essentialism, William C. Bagley. He developed essentialism in the early 20th century when progressive education was gaining dominance and weakening academic discipline, leading him to assert teacher authority, effort, and mastery of essential subject matter as the core purpose of schooling. Bagley's work founded the essentialist movement, emphasizing structure, academic rigor, and cultural continuity. His insistence on disciplined learning counterbalanced the extremes of progressivism and influenced mid-century educational reforms focused on standards and accountability. He believed progressive education had become too permissive and unstructured, neglecting the intellectual and moral development of students. For him, education should center on the systematic transmission of essential knowledge and moral values. Teachers must be the firm authority figures who guide students toward discipline, respect, and mastery of fundamental subjects. The next is a comparative education scholar, Isaac Candle. He contributed essentialism during a period of increasing educational relativism and social change, emphasizing the school's role in preserving cultural heritage and transmitting enduring intellectual traditions. Candle reinforced the intellectual foundations of essentialism by grounding it in cultural and moral values. His comparative studies influenced international education, advocating for intellectual discipline and cultural transmission. He emphasized that education should transmit the accumulated wisdom of the past to prepare students for civic and moral life. For him, education must focus on intellectual discipline and moral development through rigorous study of the humanities and sciences. Teachers are custodians of culture, responsible for preserving civilization's enduring truths. Another chief critic for progressive education is Hyman Rickover. He strengthened essentialism in the Cold War era, where concerns over American educational inadequacy intensified after Sputnik by demanding rigorous standards in science, mathematics, and disciplined learning. Rickover's advocacy linked essentialist ideals with national progress and accountability in education. His influence sparked reforms emphasizing science, mathematics, and disciplined study as keys to both personal and national movement. He believed education should prepare citizens to meet the intellectual and moral challenges of a democratic, technologically advanced society. For him, education must be structured, rigorous, and focused on mastery. He urged schools to challenge students through high expectations, strict standards, and respect for academic achievement. Another defender of academic rigor is Arthur Bester. He advanced essentialism in the 1950s when public schools were criticized for diluted curricula, arguing for a return to academically rigorous content-centered, liberal education. Bester revitalized essentialism during a time when American education faced criticism for declining academic standards. His advocacy for academic excellence and intellectual rigor influenced national education debates, particularly during the Cold War era. He criticized schools for abandoning intellectual training in favor of practical or social functions. For him, education must emphasize a rigorous study in mathematics, science, history, literature, and languages. Teachers should cultivate logical reasoning and mental discipline rather than cater to social or vocational trends. The proponent for cultural literacy, E.D. Hirsch Jr. He revitalized essentialism in the 1980s amid declining literacy rates and widening achievement gaps, promoting a shared body of essential knowledge as the foundation for literacy, academic success, and educational equity. Hirsch's work modernized essentialism for the information age, influencing curriculum design and national education standards. His core knowledge foundation continues to shape educational policy, emphasizing shared culture and academic standards. He proposed the concept of cultural literacy, arguing that effective communication and civic participation require common background knowledge. He believed schools must teach a core curriculum that preserves cultural and intellectual unity. For him, education must ensure that all students acquire a shared body of knowledge necessary for understanding and civic engagement. He promoted content-rich instruction that balances skill development with cultural substance. In the present, essentialism continues to influence core curriculum movements and accountability systems in education. Its call for academic rigor, discipline, and mastery of foundational subjects underlies many educational standards and testing frameworks. The back to basics emphasis remains visible in reforms focused on literacy, numeracy, and cultural literacy across schools worldwide. Essentialism stands as a call to preserve intellectual tradition, moral integrity, and cultural continuity in education. From Bagley's foundation to Rickover's reformist rigor and Hirsch's modern core knowledge, essentialist thinkers must upheld the value of disciplined learning and shared understanding. The essentialist tradition reminds us that education must not merely adapt to change, but safeguard the enduring truths and knowledge that define human progress. This has been the historical development of essentialism in education. For more helpful videos in related education courses, you may subscribe to this channel. Thank you in advance.